Hi, and welcome. I'm early. I'm so glad you're early. Welcome, welcome. Say hello and where you're logging in from. I'm Ethan. If you've never met before, hello. I imagine I've met some of you before, but I'd be curious to know who's on. I'm feeling particularly energized today. I'll tell you more about why in a few minutes. Um, yeah, there are good things happening in life and in this world, despite what Facebook will tell you. I swear, I've gotten off Facebook. I get off Facebook probably once a month. I'll deactivate it from my phone, and then I just keep coming back because I do have a family Facebook group. Why you need to know that, I don't know. Let's do a sound check. Can you hear me okay? Let me know in the chat box. So, welcome, welcome. Again, thanks for being early. So please feel, oh, good. I'm glad you can hear me. Awesome. Hi, Renee. Hi, Lindsay. Yay. Okay, good. I was making sure because I think I typed something and then nobody responded, and I was like, that's good. Hi, Michelle. Awesome. I'm so glad, man. I wish there's got to be a platform coming out soon that allows us to actually be together via video in the same room, so it's not just me. Hi, Aunt Chloe. Great to see you. And hi, Lindsay. Good to see you. I was just thinking about you yesterday. I have an idea for you. Email me because I have an idea for you. Hi, Betsy. I missed you too. Good to see you. It's 4:00, which is right when I said I'd start, and I'm going to give 2 minutes and just 2 minutes for folks to log on. But we've got a check-in question. I heart check-in questions, and the check-in question today is, I'm not trying to come up with it. I'm trying to remember it. It's what are you longing for in your life right now? Yeah, I'm not going light today. It's Wednesday. Let's do this. What are you longing for in your life right now? Great question, Renee. I mean, a great point that Zoom does work well for group things, but I think we have 600 people signed up for this webinar. And so if everyone showed up, which is not likely, it would be tough. We'd all be these tiny little squares. Hi, Stephanie, welcome. What are you longing for in your life right now? Lindsay says predictability. I feel you. Spring, says Leslie. Nothing. Wow, I love it, Lauren. That's a beautiful answer. Quiet. Clean closets. Sounds like some Marie Kondo is happening, or gonna happen maybe. Understanding a direction for retirement. Dark chocolate. Nancy, you sound like Anna and Elsa in Frozen. Chocolate. I'm sorry to hear that folks are stressed. Is it? I think it's like Ivy Day, right? Is today Ivy Day when our students going to be finding out in the next few hours? Maybe that's happening live right now, and I'm not even aware. But I think that's happening this week. I'm pretty sure that's happening this week. Well, hi and welcome. And I'm excited to be here. I'm excited because today was a day I got up early. I did a little workshop with some counselors at Compton Unified. That was awesome. I felt honored to go down there and speak with them. And then I finished 2 chapters of my book. That's coming out soon. So I think I'm doing celebrations is what I'm doing. And then I picked up my daughter from school, dropped her off at a play place with my mom, and I'm going to go pick up my daughter again in an hour. And then I'm going to spend the weekend with friends. I love that, Renee, wanting to thrive. So let me share my screen with you. What are we talking about today? We're talking about workshops. I'm excited to share this content because I haven't talked about this for a year since I did this course last year. So if you're here for How to Lead a Life-Changing College Essay Workshop, you're in the right place. I won't be vamping anymore. I'm going to get right into the content. So here's the sentence. And if you're willing to do this, I'd love to hear from more folks. What is something that you're longing for in your life right now? One thing that I'm longing for is I think more quiet, more slowness. As I'm saying that, I'm slowing down. I think I tend to go fast, especially when I'm sharing things that I'm excited about. And I've been going fast to try to finish this book, meaning trying to be really productive. So I think I'm longing for slowness. What are you longing for? I'm curious to hear. I was a little uneasy about asking that question, by the way. But if you've never met me before, here's the bio page. I went to Northwestern in Irvine. I got some counseling certificates. I've been doing this for about 15 years. I've been practicing being human for about 38 years. I collect certifications. If you have any ideas for great certifications, by the way, I'd love to hear them. And I've got a website that you've seen before because you're on this webinar. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about the college essay. I wrote a book on it, and the new book is going to be College Admission Essentials. So it's like everything but the personal statement, but I'll also include some personal statement stuff. And I had the opportunity 2 weeks ago to visit Switzerland to do some essay workshops, some schools there. And this is the updated Zola, the gratuitous daughter picture of her with her Taylor Swift bangs and her first trip on a gondola. And that's, my friends are like, have this amazing place in the French Alps. I know that sounds like a dream, and that's not the way my life usually goes, but I was so grateful for that. So that's another thing I'm celebrating. I've got a podcast. I've got new episodes coming out really soon. I'm in this equity and access. Well, that would be different. Equity and access series. And then I've got one coming up from Harlan Cohen, author of The Naked Roommate. And one with, I'll let you see. I'll send it to you via email. And if you're not a part of the Facebook group yet, please join us. Just look up College Essay Forum for Counselors. We've got about 2,000 folks in there. And I imagine that group will be busy in the next week, just talking about why did the UCs not accept anyone, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm loving hearing this. Thanks, Renee, for that. I'm hearing lots of like folks looking for peace and serenity. Laura says meaningful work. I'm curious about these things. I wish we could just sit and talk about these things because that would be an interesting conversation. Today, I'm going to share with you 6 ways that I believe most essay workshops fail in the first 5 minutes. So in other words, ways to not start a workshop. 5 moments that I've seen, paradigm shifts happen. I call them the life-changing moments. Because if we're not here changing lives, then what are we doing? And then I'm going to give some really specific tips on leading workshops. And, that could be a workshop with just 5 students, or it could be a workshop with 300 students. And I'm even going to tell you when I think it's okay to lie to your students. I'm going to do a pitch. So if you've never heard me speak before, know that most of my content is free and I don't do a pitch, but I'm going to do a little pitch at the end for my essay workshop in a box because I have to pay the bills as well, which is an on-demand curriculum. And then how to lead a life-changing workshop. And it's a short pitch. It's 5 minutes long. So we'll do like 45 minutes of content and 5 minutes of pitch, and then we'll do Q&A at the end. But my goal but basically I've taken everything like in my brain around how to do this, and I've put it into these 2, and into the course basically. At the end, I'm going to share with you my outline for a 1-hour workshop. Actually, I'm going to share with you 2 ways that I outline a 1-hour workshop. I'll show you how to get the slides and the recording, and I'm going to give away a free book. I'm feeling kind of like kooky this afternoon. I don't know why. I just had caffeine. I've given up caffeine until right now, until like I got home and I was like, I need a little energy. So I ate 5 dark chocolate espresso beans. So much for slowness. So here's 6 ways facilitators lose their audience in the first 5 minutes. 1, being too caffeinated. Here are some more ways. Giving out a whole lot of information. Now, I've seen counselors, and by the way, I'm totally doing it wrong by leading this workshop, and it's not really a workshop, it's a webinar, and I'm giving you a whole lot of information. I would not recommend doing this if the goal is to help a group of students write a personal statement. Why? Because when we spit out information at folks, rapid fire, or what I call, using the fire hose method, it puts them in this receptive state, this passive state. What Paulo Freire calls the la sistema bancaria, which is like the banking system of education, right? Where it's like the idea is there's one person who has the ideas and we are opening the minds and putting these ideas in. And then, instead, well, I'll share with you the instead in just a little bit, but that's sort of the banking system of education. And I think it puts folks in a passive state, like a kind of note-taking state. And that's not where I want them personally when we're trying to generate the content of a personal statement. 2, those super long intros that you see at conferences where the presenter details their academic and professional history? Not so much, right? That's because students don't care all that much. I mean, they want to know that they can trust you, but if that trust and rapport is already built, let's move on. Something too tangential. Now, I caught myself when I was talking about espresso beans because I was like, oh, I'm about to violate my own rule. What I'm talking about is those little kind of funny stories that someone is using to try and break the ice that actually go on too long. So when something too tangential starts to pop up, I go, okay, and I start to kind of look at my watch. Maybe some of you did it in the first 3 minutes when I was, when I was holding, it's starting 2 minutes late, basically. You've seen this before, having every person in a room say their name and why they're there. 2 reasons I think this isn't a great idea. One is like our time is so short and so precious together. And 2, that question of like, why are you here is, I find, often not a great question. Our students aren't quite sure how to answer it. Or they'll hear what the last person says, and then for the sake of kind of playing it safe, they'll just be like, yeah, I guess I'm here to write a personal statement. So unless they've been given some guidance, some specific guidance, I find that it's not a great way to start a workshop. It also takes a ton of time. I've been frustrated at conferences, for example, when we're in a pre-conference session and the person saying their name and why they're there, or just saying your name and where, sometimes takes like 20 minutes. Let's get to it. I find also that, sharing sort of a superficial check-in question, like, what's your name and one of your hobbies, doesn't help us get at what we're trying to get at. Let me step back for a second. One of the great things that I think, one of the important things, and I talk about this in the course, is like, how do you set an intention for your workshop so you have a clear sense of what you're doing, so that you have a clear sense of like how things and why things are mapping out the way they're mapping out. Because it could be that I have kind of a vague sense, I want them to write their personal statement. But, what I'm trying to do, for example, at the start of a workshop is we're not trying to write a personal statement. I'm actually trying to create psychological safety. So asking the question, give me your name and one of your hobbies, is that going to help me create psychological safety? No. So figuring out what that intention is and being really clear, articulating that for myself, is going to help me know which exercises to keep and which to cut. Another, if you're looking for better questions, a resource that I love is this 100 Brave and Interesting Questions. Now, you may not know where this came from, but I had a friend who was in a counseling program with me, and he was having trouble like meeting strangers. And he's like, I just don't know how to meet folks at parties. And I said, well, what kind of questions are you asking? And he said, I asked him like, what do you do? What do you do for fun? What's your work? What do you do for work? And I was like, oh, I think you need some like better questions. So we put together this Google Doc, and I called it initially Questions for Meeting Strangers at Parties. And they're at all levels of sort of intimacy, like, what is something you're longing for in your life is kind of in the middle range, right? There are lighter questions, and then there are, deeper questions. So I use this sometimes when I'm trying to start, and facilitate a workshop, just as a, I call it vulnerability training, right? Because I think vulnerability takes practice. And I think there are, when I lead a workshop, there are like different levels of vulnerability. Like I'll kind of start with level 3. And then because sometimes we'll kind of start with 1. What's a hobby? That's not super vulnerable. Start at level 3. Then we'll do an exercise that's kind of at level 5 or 6. And then maybe we'll get to level 7 or 8, depending on how much time we have. Sort of depending on the vibe of the group. I don't tend to go to level 9 or 10 vulnerability because we usually just don't have time to sort of build that. I'm not sure what that is, but I'm really excited about level 10 vulnerability. I think level 10 vulnerability is banging a pillow and screaming at like father or mother based on the way that they treated you in a group full of people. I'm down for that in the right context, but this is not what I would be doing in a college essay workshop. And then there are other crappy icebreaker exercises like, I don't know, pass the invisible ball, or I'm going to offend some people if you're like, but I love that icebreaker. Or like there's a theater game called Zip Zap Zop, which is kind of fun for getting the energy up, but it's not great, I find, for getting students to like know each other and know themselves in an efficient way. So I'm looking for what are those exercises and those experiences that we can have together, because time is usually limited, right, to an hour or 2 hours, that are going to help us go deep relatively fast. Not too deep, too fast, but to, to kind of build the container. All right. Upside down. So what are some better ways to start a workshop? Here are 2 ways to, in my opinion, more effectively establish rapport in the first 5 minutes. One of these is an exercise that if you've heard me present at NACAC, you probably had me do this exercise with you. And it's this exercise called If You Really Knew Me. I love this. It's one of my favorite question stems. My friend Aaron Ross taught me this one. An example of this one. I'll share the "If You Really Knew Me" that I shared this morning with the Compton counselors. If you really knew me, you would know that this morning, as I was checking Facebook, I came upon this article on memes that were people talking about things that they saw when they were a kid that made them think that other people were rich. And the first one that popped up was like the Scholastic Book Award. I guess that's what it's called. I don't know if it's an award, but it's that little pamphlet that came to classrooms, and you could like order books out of it. And I used to look at that thing and like dream about the books that I would potentially buy, but I couldn't. We couldn't afford them. And other kids would buy these books, and I would be like, wow, that's super cool. And I got a little, something happened inside me. I'm pausing for a second. I'm asking myself, so what? So what? I felt shame. I think I felt shame, like retroactively thinking about ways that I felt less than based on, not having money in certain situations, not being able to afford certain things. Another one was seeing someone's giant refrigerator and they have an automatic ice dispenser. So what? Now, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to drive towards a value. My big struggle in life right now is enoughness in all its forms. Like, what does it mean to be enough and to do enough? So what? I've got a working theory that okay, so I think I'm in some ways more like I am enough. Like I'm giving enough in my work. I am good enough as a father, but there are other ways that I'm super hard on myself. And it feels like there's something that's a little bit broken in terms of my relationship with enoughness. So what? Okay, I could keep going. The simple 3 parts of this exercise are: reveal something, like reveal yourself. 2, answer the question, so what? And then 3, see if you can drive towards a value that's important to you. If we were in a workshop setting, if it was fewer than 10 of us, I would say let's do this all together. If we were in a larger, I think I did this at NACAC last year, and like 500 people playing If You Really Knew Me in pairs, I would have us do that. But I love this exercise. It's such a beautiful one to begin to till the soil. And to me, when I'm trying to create this psychological safety, it's a nice way to do it, because I'm asking for vulnerability, but I'm asking for it in a controlled way. And I'm giving the rules of the game. If you really knew me, finish the sentence. So folks can enter at whatever level they want, which I think is important. And then, so what? Which is kind of something that leads towards insight. And then the value that I'm asking them to drive through. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of seeding the requirements, in my view, of the college application, the personal statement, right? What's something that would help me get to know you better as a person? So what is something that can lead to insight? And then values. I'm really interested in helping students begin to think about their values. Okay. So that's one of the ones that I really love to start a workshop with. And that's some of why I like it. The next one is by, and this is related, but modeling vulnerability by asking a question that you yourself are nervous to answer and then going first, right? So an example of this is like this question that I asked y'all at the start, what's something that you're longing for in your life? And then going first. Now, the reason I think it's important to go first, and this is something that came up in the workshop earlier today, the counselor just noticed that I was doing it. But he said he'd played If You Really Knew Me before. And he said, it was cool how you kind of modeled it. And then it felt like, oh, I could go, he's really going for it. That's what he said. And he's like, I felt like I could go for it. And the way that I think of this is like, we're asking our students to go out on the skinny limb, right? And be vulnerable. It's one thing to ask them to just go out there and be like, don't worry, it's safe. The limb's not going to break, right? It's another thing to go out on the skinny limb yourself. They see, hey, the limb didn't break. No one made fun, unless someone does make fun, in which case you can kind of negotiate that. And then they say, wow, he revealed himself and like he went there and like he seems okay. Okay, maybe I can go there too. So that's just another way. There are many ways to do that. There are many questions that can do that. And I like to play with different questions at different starts, at the starts of different workshops to sort of get things cooking, as it were. My friend Keith Marin uses that phrase. He's a great facilitator. Let's get cooking, he says. Here are what I believe to be the 5 potentially life-changing workshop moments. Okay, and I don't have a slide for this, so I have to check my notes for what the first one is. Da-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-da-da-da-dum, ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. There we go. Okay. Okay. I want to make sure I get them right. Yes. Okay. So the first one, or I should say the first set of possibilities is through the warm-up exercises. So I've seen students have like really great aha moments in those warm-ups. Like I've seen students playing If You Really Knew Me, and just open right up. Just suddenly it's like there's a thing that was just present for them. One of the ways that I think to set up that exercise that works really well is by asking students to share what's a challenge that's present for you right now. Now that's like a big question, right? Like what's something that right now is on your mind and on your heart? And also just giving them enough time to be able to share. I don't mean like 12 minutes, I mean like 4 minutes, right? Because if we give them like 30 seconds, there's not really time to sort of get in there with one another, to cook together. And so I find that can actually be the first kind of moments of like landing, of being like, okay, here we are. I think those warm-up exercises are especially important too, because students oftentimes come in with ideas about what a college essay workshop or personal statement workshop should look like or feel like or sound like. And by kind of disrupting their train of thought, their narrative, and giving them something that they maybe didn't expect, I find that can be like a pretty powerful way of kind of, since I'm just going to be putting up a potentially life-changing workshop moment slide, I'm going to like take it down so you can see my face. Okay, cool. So the next potentially life-changing workshop moment is the values exercise. And you've heard me probably preach about this if you've heard me speak before, but this values exercise has at least 8 uses that I can think of. I love to use it early on in the process so that students begin to, I mean, how many students do you know could like off the cuff, name their top 5 values? I mean, how many adults could do it, right? But I find that this is really important for them to begin thinking about what stuff means to them in ways that they can like point to. What do I mean by this? I mean that oftentimes I think students are asked, why is that meaningful to you? Why should we care? Or so what? And by taking out this values exercise and just handing it to them, it oftentimes is going to give them a path for an answer. So for example, a student says, I love, what if something, if you really knew me, you'd know that like basketball is my life. Well, why? Values exercise. Give me some uncommon connections, I like to say, right? What are some things that connect to basketball for you? What does it mean to you? That values exercise gives us a menu for ways of looking at it. It also, if it's used in the right way, can help students come up with these uncommon insights, these things that maybe not everyone associates with basketball, but this student does. I use it in so many different ways. When a student is trying to come up with the ending of their personal statement, values exercise, what are the things that are going to be important to you? When it comes to them trying to define why a career is important to them, what values are important to you in that career? It also ends up being useful. So if I get it early on in the personal statement process, when they're thinking about their activities list, right? Look, give me this activities list description. I can point to what values are coming through, or are no values coming through? Is the description kind of lying there flat? I love a great activities list description. I know this is like kind of tangential, but that gives 3 or 4 values. Or a why us. Like I should, by the end of that why us essay, be able to point to several values. So there are so many different ways. I'm thinking about it a lot right now because this is like the thesis of my new book, which is just like, I don't mean to like, here I'm pimping out my new book. I'm just thinking about it. It's on the brain right now. That I think the values are sort of glimpsing the matrix of college, the college admission, the college application process. And at the end of the process, they can point to their application and it's like, here are the different values that are coming through. So that to me, and in discussing those and why those are meaningful, I think can be hugely empowering for students. The third one is the feelings and needs exercise. I'm going to take a sip of tea here to slow down. So the feelings and needs exercise, if you were to just throw out the rest of my book and keep those, whatever it is, 12 pages, I think they're the most important pages because for students who face challenges, and many students have, many don't think that they're challenges, but those students who have faced challenges, walking them through that feelings and needs exercise, as I often do in workshops with the narrative structure, can be paradigm shifting. And in particular, and I'm kind of moving to the fourth one now. So what is the feelings and needs exercise? Sorry, I'm kind of skipping ahead. The feelings and needs exercise basically involves asking a student 6 questions and giving them time to process the answers to those questions and write it on a chart. And so I'll tell you what the questions are. You can look it up later if you want. See if there's a video of me like doing this exercise. But the first question is, what's a challenge that you faced, or a set of challenges? Based on the challenge you faced, what are the effects of that challenge? Okay, like what are the external effects, not the emotional effects? That's internal, right? What are the external effects? How did that thing, for example, my parents were divorced. What did that look like in your life? You know, for me, my mom moved out. Okay, and so that effects column is like one thing that I don't say in the video is like it's like the visual movie version of the challenge. So if you label the challenge being bullied, well, what did that look like? Did it look like eating lunch alone? Did it look like violence, physical abuse? You know, bullying looks many different things for many different students. The effects column helps us to understand what it meant for you. And it helps to also differentiate your experience of that challenge from anybody else who might have experienced a similar challenge, right? Effects. Based on the effects, what are the feelings? How did you feel as you went through that experience? There's like a little chart, a menu of feelings. And then based on the feelings, what are the needs underlying those feelings? This is the most important part of the exercise. Underneath each feeling, so I felt isolated. Why? What was the need? I needed connection. I needed love. The feeling was confusion. What did you need? I needed transparency. I needed honesty. That's where I think that helps students to find the emotional core of their story oftentimes. And then what did you do about it? How did you become an active agent in your life? That's the fourth column. What I did about it. How did I meet my need for being seen or being heard? Well, I met that need by joining a club, or I met that need by like actually opening up to my dad about how I felt about the situation. How did you meet that need? Or what extracurricular activities did you get involved with? I didn't have that sense of community. So I started this video games club, or I started a documentary film club. That's right, a way to get an extracurricular activities. And then what did you learn through the experience? And that's another use for the values exercise. What did I learn? I don't know. Values exercise. Here are some ideas. And then the optional column at the end is, if you want to talk about your career at the end of your essay, how could some of these lessons that you've learned help serve you in that future career? Okay, so that's the 2-minute version of the feelings and needs exercise. And what I'll do is I'll just guide students through that, and I'll spend maybe like 20 minutes in a workshop doing that. A little bit longer if it's a 3-hour workshop. But then the important piece, and this is especially true for a 3-hour workshop, is having students pair up and share their feeling, like the results of their feelings and needs exercise with one another. Now, this is an edgy moment, and it's really important to qualify this and to tell students that they do not have to share. I usually give about 12 minutes for this, maybe 15 minutes. And I tell them, I'm going to give you an opportunity, because what I'll do first is I'll sort of model how to give feedback on the feelings and needs exercise. And I'm teaching like reflective, mirroring, and like, reflective language and that kind of thing. And then at the end, I'll say, okay, now's your opportunity before we take a break to share your story. And it's a unique opportunity. You might not have had a chance to share this story with somebody else. So you do not have to, but you're going to have 15 minutes with a partner. You can either A, just one partner spends 15 minutes doing it, or B, you split the time, 7.5 minutes each. I'll let you all decide. But don't just sit there and do nothing. Okay, that's what I'll say to them. And then I give them 15 minutes to work through that. And just allowing the student an opportunity to tell their story to somebody else. And then this is important. This is the fourth life-changing moment. Having that other person share back the story that they're hearing can be really, really interesting. I model this. If you Google feelings and needs exercise at YouTube, there's like me, doing this with a student. I had already done this exercise with him, so we were kind of just recreating it on my front porch, but it gives you a sense of what I'm talking about there. Okay. And the last one, which is the most important one, is sharing at the end of the workshop. So one of my favorite things to do if I do like, say, a 2-day or 3-day workshop is actually, getting together and sharing the personal statements that students have written. In 3 days, yeah, it's possible. It's possible to write a personal statement. I usually don't let them know that we're going to do that until like halfway through, the second day maybe. But 3 days, it's definitely with a 4-day workshop, students can totally create something. And just having a story circle and writing my own personal statement too. This is what I'm going to do with I'm having a counselor retreat coming up next week, and we're going to be writing our own personal statements and then sharing them with one another at the end of the workshop. And it's because I've seen the power that it can have with groups of students, the way it can bond a class of seniors, for example, as they're getting ready to start the fall. It's sweet. So I highly, highly recommend that if you've got time and ability to do that. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. Those are my 5 potentially life-changing workshop moments. And here are some tips. So these are like really specific strategic tips for leading workshops. So the first thing is making sure that the task is super duper clear. And I don't want to like undersell this one because I think when it's super important. Often I hear instructions that are vague or ambiguous to me. You know, it might sound something like, so write about that for a little bit, or so share with your partner. Take a few minutes to share with your partner, right? Now, if I were to say that to a group of counselors, they would find some interesting things to share with one another. But having a student understand like exactly what they're being asked to do, I find goes a long way into getting results and keeping them engaged. Forget getting results, just keeping them engaged, because the results are so intangible anyway, right? But for example, if I say to a group of students, like, let's just talk about the feelings and needs exercise. If I say, so we're going to spend 15 minutes and we're going to share the feelings and needs exercise with each other, it would be like, right? If instead I say, okay, you're going to take 7.5 minutes. I'll let you know when time is up. And you're going to share with your partner your feelings and needs exercise. You're going to start with the challenge, share with the effects, feelings, needs, and just kind of walk through it. Your partner is going to listen mostly. Partners, you're allowed to ask clarifying questions. 1, which is to say, what did you mean by that? Or can you say more about that? And then 2, you can use reflective language. And I show them what that is. Okay. Then at the end of the exercise, and I know I'm repeating, but I'm kind of giving you a sense of what I mean by making the task super duper clear. At the end, partner who's been listening, you're going to take the feelings and needs exercise, if partner A is comfortable having you look at it, and just share back the story you heard. If partner A, if you sense that you're not going to be comfortable handing over your paper, then partner B, you're going to need to take some notes while your partner's sharing. So that kind of specificity kind of helps students understand, okay, it gives structure in a way that I think hopefully helps the person feel safe. Okay. So also having, like I said, making sure that it's super duper clear is going to sort of prevent the sort of flailing and like checking out, checking the watch, checking the phone. Clarify how much time the exercise is going to last. You can tell that I'm doing this. It should take about 12 minutes, or it should take about 4 minutes. I love to stay and keep track of like how much time things are taking, because I think that goes a long way to keeping students engaged. And I'm tracking. I'm like constantly scanning the room to see like who's with me and who's not. And if I sense that the energy is lagging, I'm going to name that. That's not in the tips, but name things like that. Are we okay? Do we need a break? Some of you already do this naturally, I know, but this is something that I've seen other facilitators do, and I'm like really grateful for, because I feel like the facilitator is really paying attention to me. So once you clarify how much time the exercise will take, I think it's a good idea to assign a little less time than it'll take. So that's why if it's like a 15-minute exercise, I might say, let's do 12 minutes. It's going to be 6 minutes each. So technically I'm lying a little bit, because in my mind, I know that I'm actually going to extend by a few minutes. I think that's okay in this situation. I hope you agree. But I'm going to extend a few minutes if they're actively working. Why? Because if I'm in a 2-hour workshop and I've just given them, I'll give an example. I was doing the counselor workshop this morning, and I was illustrating the essence objects exercise. Now I knew I had a bunch of stuff I wanted to get to in 2 hours, but I knew that this little piece of the essence objects exercise, if I could get them to understand that, then it could potentially have an impact for many other students, right? So I was like, I'm going to extend a little bit here, even though in my preparation I was like, I'll spend 2 minutes on this. I spent more like 4 minutes, 5 minutes on this, because that difference, especially when students are writing their essays, could be the difference between coming to an insight and not coming to an insight. Now, maybe that's not true, and maybe I'm just being like super just micromanaging, but I've seen how, when students have just a few more minutes, or even in some cases like 1 more minute to process through something when I've given them a really specific task, it can be the idea generating thing that's going to power them through the next draft, right? It's going to get them inspired to write the next thing. That's really what I'm trying to do. And that's what I'm trying to do like in one-on-one sessions with students, is I'm just trying to energize them enough to inspire them to write this next draft, so that by the end of that session, when we're talking together, whether it's for 15 minutes or an hour, they feel like excited That's what I'm trying to do at the end of the workshop, is like, how do we have some energy and ideas going forward? If you're worried about students sort of messing around or talking or whatever, just ask another teacher or counselor to kind of be your eyes and ears, not as a way to sort of like patrol, as I've seen sometimes teachers will do, like walk up and down the aisles and that's not what I'm talking about. But just somebody else who can you can during breaks say, hey, what are you noticing? Or our students seem to be tracking what's happening in the workshop, because chances are if that other teacher or counselor is in there having conversations with them, they're going to be seeing and hearing things that you're not. If students are not on task, and you can tell by just, are they on their phones? Have you asked them to put their phones away? Do they seem to be writing and responding to the things that you're responding to, right? That you're asking them to respond to. If not, it could be that it's not their fault. I think sometimes, the tendency is to go like, man, they're not paying attention. They must be tired or something. But it could just be they don't actually know exactly what to do. And so what I'll do in that situation, and I don't know if it feels passive aggressive to them or not, but I'll be like, for example, if I've asked students to, for example, not talk during a certain exercise, like the essence objects exercise, and I find that they're talking, I'll just say, just want to request silence again. I think this exercise, and I'll say why. I think the exercise works a lot better if folks aren't talking, rather than kind of going up. I mean, I will, if I have to, go to a student and be like, hey, I'm feeling really distracted by your talking, and I really want everybody to get a lot out of this, and I'm just finding my attention keeps being drawn to you. I did this in one of my workshops in Switzerland a few weeks ago, and the student responded and he engaged. It was cool. And I did it in the kind of nonviolent communication way, where I spoke to my feeling. I'm feeling distracted. I think that's a feeling. And like, what is my need? My need is to share this content. I really want you to get a lot out of this. So that's simple. Just pairing a feeling with a need, I find, is a great way to kind of sharpshoot the talkers, right? The students who are, because he was bringing in, 3 or 4 other guys with him. But it also helped to just sort of for everyone to re-clarify what we were doing. Let's see, don't leave the room during paired work. I find it's best when I've asked students to do something specific, especially at the beginning of the workshop, when I'm still kind of gaining their confidence, to not leave the room. Make sure that I've peed or I've, taken care of all my calls or emails before, and to really stay in the room mentally and physically. And to, for example, not check my phone. Sometimes I'll see this, right? People are leading something, and in between they're kind of checking their phone, and I'm like, what? It's sending a signal to everybody else, like, oh, it's time to check our phones, or, hey, remember that you have a phone. You might have some interesting things happening in that phone. Avoid checking your cell phone during the workshop. And then this is important. So even though I am pretty micromanaging in terms of like my time allotment, I do try and leave room for the productive tangent, because it could be that thing that the student says or the question they bring up, in the Q&A, right? Leaving enough time for Q&A becomes the workshop itself. So making sure that there is some wiggle room, that you don't so jam pack it that there's no time for stuff to go off course in hopefully interesting ways. Here's a workshop. Let me take another sip of tea. This is an outline that I do. This is one of 2 outlines for a 1-hour workshop. So I love to start, I'll spend just a minute or so sharing who I am. But first I start with vulnerability training, which is to say I get right in there with an exercise right at the jump. Like I'm not into those. So let me tell you a little background about myself. I'm just like, let's do this, right? So we jump in with exercises, and I do a couple different ones. And then I give them my very brief, hey, here's who I am. Then I'm into brainstorming, where, and my like how I became college essay guy, I used to give like this story. Now I'm more apt to be like, all right, here's the 2-minute version. Let's get to the exercises and how I think that they're going to help. I do think a little bit of context is helpful, so that they can know, like, hey, some of the stuff I'm going to be sharing with you is like screenwriting based, and here's why, because I thought I wanted to be a screenwriter. But the exercises that I really love to do, that I think work well with students again and again, is the essence objects and the values exercise. And then I changed this format. I used to give narrative essay first, and I found that students oftentimes came away from the workshop feeling like they had to write about challenges, because that was the first thing that I talked about. And I think oftentimes students have read an essay about someone overcoming a challenge and felt like, wow, I wish I could do that. What's my strongest challenge? Probably like, almost not making the hockey team. yeah, how could I make that impactful? And they're using these techniques to try and make the hockey story impactful when there's so many other things to write about, right? There's like everything else to write about. And so I'll start now with the montage example, and I'll give them an essay. I've got a couple different essays that I like to analyze, just to be like, hey, here's what a personal statement looks like. Because sometimes they don't even know that, right? They go, oh, wow, that's what an essay looks like. And then I do like an exercise again. I'm trying to sort of every like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, give them another exercise. So it's not just me talking at them. We do a little, I call it bio break. I usually will say like 4 minutes, and I'll tell them the exact time. It's 4:39. I want you to be back at 4:43. So they're like, oh, dang, he's serious. And it's really important, I think, to like stick to that first break if you're doing like a long workshop, so that they know you're serious. Otherwise they turn into like 15, 20-minute breaks, right? And I'll start with students, when they're still talking or kind of coming back in the room. Then I get into how I write a narrative essay. I love to do that feelings and needs exercise, even like a short format, because I feel like, did my times add up right? Let's see, 20, 40, 60, 75. Whoops. Sorry, this is a 90-minute workshop outline. If I'm doing an hour-long workshop, I'll give you that one in just a second. I meant to write 90-minute workshop on this. I'm looking at this. I'm like, wait, this doesn't add up. This is like, I can't do all this in an hour. I will generally not do the feelings and needs exercise in an hour-long workshop. I'll talk to them about like the basics of how to write a narrative essay based on screenwriting structure, but I'll save the feelings and needs exercise for the 90-minute or 2-hour workshop. Unless, I guess the exception is if there's a group of students, and in the setup, I've asked them, how many of you face challenges? And a few of them have, or like, let's say a lot of them have raised their hands. I might go right into to the feelings and needs exercise, because let's say that I've got like I worked with one group of students at a public high school in LA 2 years ago, and I said, who's faced challenges? Everybody raised their hand, and I was like, the counselor was kind of like, I was like, okay, we had 40 minutes before school started, so it was like 6:40 in the morning, and I was like, let's do the feelings and needs exercise. So we pulled out their paper and they wrote, they did that outline, and a lot of them, my sense was, I knew they did a bunch of writing. But my sense was that was a meaningful way for them to spend, 30 minutes with me or 40 minutes. And then I'll do a quick narrative essay and analysis. And I'm trying to, in that workshop format, de-emphasize the write about a career, or definitely write about a challenge. I'm trying to sort of just get them inspired with different ideas. Usually at the end of that, they'll have some sense of what potential topics could be from the essence, objects, and values. And they'll have some sense of, by the way, this is kind of meta, because I'm realizing like Lindsay, for example, and there could be other counselors at schools. This is like basically what I'm sharing is exactly like behind the scenes of what I'm doing when I'm doing my workshop. So like, it's just such a trip, Lindsay, that I'm sharing with you, for example, like, hey, here's exactly how I do what I do and why. I'm just noticing that and feeling self-conscious about it, I think. So in that narrative essay, I'm keeping it short and I'm kind of de-emphasizing the challenges one. But, by the end of that first work, that hour, they should have some menu, what I call like the menu of topics, and they should have a sense of kind of how these two structures work. Okay. That's 40 minutes. Cool. So let me share with you for 5 minutes on these two things that I've put together. One is called the Essay Workshop in a Box. I created it because I found that I was repeating myself a lot in my one-on-one sessions. So I initially created it as like resources so that I could help, one-on-one students. But I also got requests from counselors like, hey, in terms of workshops, how do you do this? I wanted to make sure that basically students were getting the best of me in our sessions. So I created this process where students can go through that. It's kind of automated. It's kind of turnkey. Like you can just kind of give a student the essay workshop in a box and they can kind of work through. I know a bunch of counselors who do this. They'll be like, yeah, I use your essay workshop in a box. I send students through the process and it gets them to that first draft. The main reason I did it is, like I mentioned, I want students to get the best of me. And the best of me means like, what are the things that I can do in that session that can't be automated? Helping them curate ideas, meaning like, when we're kind of, some of this stuff like these exercises actually can be done automatically. And it's like helping them figure out like, asking them so what on particular ideas. Inside the Essay Workshop in a Box is 29 modules, and I've already shared with you 3 of them to help students find their topic, structure, automating tons of parts of the process. Essay and the exercise work in large groups for high school counselors plus one-on-one. Here, let me just share with you inside what it looks like. All right, here's the Essay Workshop in a Box. Some of you probably already have this. But here's the sort of homepage. And essentially what I do is there's the workshop quick reference guide. So this is sort of like, let me just refresh these because I don't have them refreshed yet. I'm not feeling refreshed. While these are refreshing, let me show you what this is. So essentially it's got an hour by hour breakdown. Like if you just have an hour with them, here's what I recommend doing, right? Hour 2, this is the how to write a narrative essay, feelings and needs, exercise type stuff. How do you clarify what your role is, what we're doing here? And then there's some other, next step stuff sort of at the end. The quick reference guide that I mentioned at the top, this is sort of like what I would call like the spreadsheet. I don't know how you feel about spreadsheets, but this is kind of like the spreadsheet version of this. So here's the actual 1 hour version. I have a little, frequently asked questions page that I'll hand students. And sometimes at the beginning, I'll spend 2 minutes like letting them go over that. And that'll eliminate a lot of the questions they have. We'll oftentimes set agreements at the start, confidentiality, what's spoken here stays here. Then I start what I call the vulnerability training, essence, objects, exercise, values. I talk about the 4 types of college essays, and then I'll do the narrative and montage. And this is funny. This is the one that I have this one that I created last year when I was doing narrative first. I've now switched that. That's why I showed you that other one. It's also got it's got my video library with all the videos that I've created. And tons more stuff. So, whoops, it kind of disappeared. Let me come back. Here we go. Okay. So that's the essay workshop in a box. Christy from the Facebook group. This is just like a little testimony of her being like, hyped. I can't say enough about it. I loved it. It was awesome. Going to do it again. How much is it? Folks are wondering. It's $97 a year. Super cheap. So basically for that, you get the 29 modules and all the other stuff. The second thing I want to tell you about is this How to Lead a Life-Changing Workshop, which is this online course that I'm leading. It's starting April 10th to May 11th. It's a 5-part online training program, and all the modules are pre-recorded, so you can watch them on demand. The difference between this program, which is a 5-week program, and the Essay Workshop in a Box is basically the Essay Workshop in a Box, I like to say, is like provides you a boat and a map. But the counselor training program is like really teaches you how to sail. So like, I've given you kind of like 40 minutes of content. I think it's like 7 hours of content of really getting into all the parts of all the nooks and crannies. How do you lead that essence objects exercise, the values exercise? Why do I lead these particular ones? And what are some other ways to use them? How to use music in the workshop. I share like my actual playlist. And then, other exercises that I didn't have time to talk about, but there's how to use the Myers-Briggs. If that's interesting to you, there's something called the cups exercise and what I see in you. So just other different exercises. It's a self-paced practicum, which means that like, if you're planning a workshop, this is the way to do it, in the sense of like, you take the resources, and the way it works is it's a flipped classroom model. So you watch a session, or you listen to the session, which has been pre-recorded. And then we do a 90-minute Q&A, like once a week, for the consecutive weeks of the course, which I'll share the dates of in just a second. And you're creating your own workshop. So there's homework assignments of like, plan which day you're going to do it. Plan if you're going to do a 1 hour, a 2 hour, 3 hour. So by the time you come out of that workshop or the course, you've got your workshop planned. And we've got this cool Facebook group where we geek out on essay workshops. Tons of FAQs in there. Like, what do I do if a student's, they don't see their challenge as being important enough, or if they think it's like too personal to write about? How do we deal with that? I'll talk about how to make a mediocre extracurricular essay better, how to discuss religion in a college essay. This is stuff that, I sometimes discuss have discussed in other courses, but these are relevant to helping students in the workshop setting. Why it doesn't matter which Common App prompt you choose. And then I also talk about, and this, I know this sounds like a lot, but how to lead an online workshop for your students. So, whether you're a public school counselor, high school counselor, or a private, or an independent, like leading an online workshop, which I do every year, is a huge time saver. I find that like guiding students over a particular week or like over 2 weeks and getting them motivated to get that writing done is like, saves me tons of one-on-one time, because there's so much that can be done. Right? I talk about which platform I use, should you use a camera or not, which camera to use, which microphone, how do you make sure you get great sound? And then if you're interested in charging for workshops, some counselors do, some don't. When do you charge? How much different pricing models. Like, how do you make a pay what you can? All my workshops are pay what you can. How do you make that model work? And then again, in the Q&A, we sort of discuss things in depth. Also, how do you make sure that you actually get this thing planned? If you're finding like you need extra motivation, I've got this little how to get anything done in 30 days. Okay, how much is it? The drum roll. The UC, it's funny, I looked up the UC extension courses because I was like, what's a comparable kind of course like this? And the Berkeley courses are up to $1,000 now. I was like, whoa, that's more than they were. So this course is $597, and there's a little link, and I think Devin's going to pop up a little link that folks can do to sign up. But for the next 2 days, and this is where they're like, if you act now, it's $100 off. So we're doing like kind of a little bit of an early bird thing. So you just type in the coupon 100 off at this link, and yeah, and you'll get all the content like right away. What else? Within 24 hours, I'm going to send you a link to this presentation, a recording of this webinar, if you like. And what else? Oh yeah, it gives you, if you get the second one, like the course, it also includes the essay workshop in a box. It's got MP3 versions of all the videos. It's got a 43-page workbook. I think it's actually a 56-page workbook now, which has everything and helps you create like your lesson plan. Also, if you don't like it or if you're not finding it useful, you get your money back. So there's what is it? No something to buy. I'm trying to think of like, what are those cheesy infomercial phrases? There's no risk. Anyway, here's when the live sessions are. I put them, late afternoon Pacific time, so that folks on the East Coast and folks overseas could join. And they're Wednesday. And there's some reason I can't do that other Wednesday, so we're doing the last session on a Saturday at the same time. What else? Yeah, for the next 48 hours, it's $100 off. Just use that coupon code. And then on Saturday, the price will go back up. And that's my reminder to do a free book, which I'll do at the end of the Q&A. So we got 10 minutes. What questions have you? Let me scroll through the chat, which I've missed. Alicia's giving me a shout out for quoting Paulo Freire. What up? I know this is from way back. Phil says, I found this to be useful sometimes, having kids write their name on a little table tent in front of them. Actually, let me pause for a second, because when I continue to talk at you, it doesn't allow folks to come up with questions. So let's just pause for a minute, maybe 30 seconds. And what questions do you have? Let's type them in the chat box. And then maybe what I'll do is I'll answer those first, and then I'll go down. And the reason I'm like pausing, and I know it's a weird like radio silence moment, is that it actually gives folks a chance to like, what questions do I have to think about them? Cool. Thanks, Lindsay. I appreciate that. Oh, this is great. I'm loving the comments come through. Okay, I'm going to just read what a few folks have shared. Phil says, I found this to be useful sometimes. Having kids write their name on a little table tent in front of them, and on the back write something most people in their lives do not know about them, but don't ask to reveal until well into looking at writing topics or pairs. Awesome. That's what I do, and I essentially do that, and I ask them to just reveal it at the start. But I like that idea too, Phil. Terry says, do these brave and interesting questions create psychological safety? Good question. Depends on how and when you use them, right? So could a brave and interesting question create a sense of nervousness? For sure. If I were to just meet you and I would be like, hey, what do you despise most about your father? Right? I don't think that's one of the questions, but certainly that could kind of put someone on guard, right? So, but I found that the right question, and you've probably seen the same thing to be true, the right question at the right moment, and these are 100 ideas, are a great way to help, build that kind of psychological safety. So yes, but it depends on how we use it and when. Molly likes If You Really Knew Me exercise. Sweet. Let's see, what else? Is the values exercise a handout we can find? Yeah, Stephanie, if you just Google values exercise, it's right there. And yeah, Molly, totally on the concrete details. Handouts for these values and 6 questions. Yeah, so anything that I mentioned, Lindsay, just Google it. So like, yes, it's all in the course, but like the feelings and needs exercise, if you just Google feelings and needs exercise, there's a handout. Is there a handout? I think the handout is in the course. The feelings and needs extras. I'm trying to remember. I think if there's not a PDF, it's really easy to create it on a blank sheet of paper as you just listen to me do the video. And yes, Molly, totally on. Oh, good. And thank you. Thanks, Jarek, for sharing that. Awesome. Sweet. Do all students access their phones? Do you allow students access to their phones during your seminars? Terry, I do, because there are times when I want them to use them. Like when we're talking about ONET online, I'll just say to students, well, two things. Well, times when I'll ask them to use their phone. One is go to onetonline.org right now, type in a placeholder career in the top right corner, because I want them to see how to use that resource, because it's a gold mine. And I use it in the montage structure. I know that I'm kind of just throwing that at you, but my point is that yes, sometimes it's super useful. The second time it's useful is once they've done all of their brainstorming work and we're live and in person, I want them to take a picture and I want them to email it to themselves. Maybe email it to me, but at least email it to themselves, so that when we're, brainstorming together and they've totally forgotten what they've done, then they can like pull out their phone and be like, oh, here's my brainstorming work. They can email it to me. I have students, put everything on a Google Doc, put the 5 exercises, all the pre-work that I give them, that's in the one-on-one setting, all on the same Google Doc. And they watch the videos some of the videos that I mentioned, and they create all that, so that first session, I'm getting a little bit into one-on-one stuff, but so that first session is really, really useful. But in short, yes, I do use phones. I do not make them put them away. Let's see. Much of this is treating students like adults. Respect. Yes. I think you're saying respect to me and respect to them. Do you change your narrative essay exercise based on Common App prompts? I don't, Stephanie. I don't, the prompts, I'm kind of interested in just helping the student describe the world they come from and how it's shaped their dreams and aspirations, right? Hashtag MIT prompt, hashtag old UC prompt. I talk about this a little bit in the book, but essentially, College Essay Essentials, essentially, I'm trying to, I'm self-conscious because I'm talking a lot about other things that are like, that you have to buy. And I don't mean to do that. I usually am like, no, everything's free. But I basically think that if they can answer the world they come from and how it's shaped their dreams and aspirations, then that's going to answer several of the Common App prompts. I also find that if students are too prompt focused, oftentimes that gets them thinking about what do they want instead of what are my gifts? What do I have to offer? And they can choose topic of their choice. And Devin answered that already. Thanks, Lindsay. You're doing a great job. The prompts can curb creativity. Molly agrees. What's the difference between montage and narrative essay? Judith, Google it, and there's like a whole description of it. That'll be more thorough than I can give us in the next 4 minutes. Do I have advice for pair work, or brainstorming when teaching online? Ooh, great question, Claire. Yeah, I do, and it's going to have to happen with the students like in between. So one of the things I do when I do my online course is I pair them with another student so that they can do the homework that I'm asking them to do. And they meet for an hour, or in some cases they might meet for an hour each, so 2 hours of the week. And I do this in the counselor workshop too. I'm having counselors meet together and brainstorm and think about how they're going to do their workshop so that they can be bouncing ideas off each other. And it seems to work pretty well. So I guess my advice is do it, pair them up with another student. Be brave about that. If they don't want it, that's okay. If they want to work with another partner, that's okay too. Like somebody not on the course. Sometimes students really like the idea of working with somebody that they don't know. I create a little college essay guy course Facebook group where they can meet partners and discuss this course and stuff. Can you show those dates for the live sessions again? Totally. It's all recorded too. So if you can't make the live sessions, you receive recordings. Thanks, Kareem. Michelle, I'm working on writing my own mission statement for my career, and I think your exercises could be used in that area of people. Totally. That's why I did this counselor course. Oh, by the way, I'm also leading an in-person intensive, May 16th through the 20th. I forgot to talk about this. May 16th through the 20th, I'm leading an in-person workshop. Devin, will you please paste the link up? I'll also follow up in the email with that. And I've got about 10 spots left. So what this is I'm basically training my team of counselors to deliver workshops, and we decided to open it up to more folks. So it's going to be 25 folks. That's the max. Actually, I think we have 8 spots left. I don't mean to create too much scarcity, but I'm just thinking literally, I think we have 8 spots. And for whoever's interested, you can sign up. You can sign up on the page for this. If you go to, anyway, Devin will put it up. But if folks are interested, there's like a little application for joining for that one, because it is so limited. Ooh, for the free book, before I forget, whoever can give me the best reason for why you should be the recipient of a free book, I'll send you College Essay Essentials. Type it in the chat box now. Jennifer says, most of the kids I work with are terrified to start the writing process and they don't see the value in the exercises. How do you overcome them? My mom made me come today and it stinks. With great exercises, Jennifer. Honestly, like with these exercises, they start to go, oh, like I'm like, there's like something happening in me emotionally. Something starting to like cook. I use that phrase again. And then they get over that pretty quickly. And it's by avoiding doing some of the things I talked about, like starting with information or like starting with a long bio. Right. So I find that just having a clear intention for the workshop and then having great exercises will help students get over that stuff fast. Betsy says, I happen to listen to your podcast on this today. So great seeing it delivered in person. Don't leave us hanging. Give us one song you use. Sure. What's one song I use? Oh, I use box cello suites. Which Yo-Yo Ma popularized, but I do the Piano Guys version. That's the one that I start with. Do you use models? I find it inhibits kids. I do use sample essays because I find that even if initially they're kind of intimidated, I'm talking into like what they can learn from it. So I get their brains really active on how can I borrow from this? What can I learn from this example? And I don't just and I also don't tell the students where the students got in for the example essays, because I don't want them to think like, oh, this is a Stanford essay, right? I just talk about them in terms of writing. We're at time. I'm going to extend by 5 minutes because we got more questions. What expectations do you set for your workshops? What will they leave with? Depends on the length, Lauren. So for the 1 hour, they're going to have a menu of topics and they're going to have some sense of the montage and narrative structure. If it's 2 hours, they're going to have ideas. And they're going to have mapped out 2 personal statement ideas, one for a narrative structure and ideas for a montage structure. And in 3 hours, we can start to like actually get into the writing. For high school counselors looking to just start these workshops with their students, where do you suggest I begin? What material should I buy or focus on your website first, since I can't do it all to begin? Lindsay, do the course. Do this, the How to Lead a Life-Changing Workshop course. By the way, and I mentioned this, but actually I didn't mention this, but it's here. If you are a public high school counselor, and if you work with primarily free and reduced lunch students, it's pay what you can. So I really don't want money to be a barrier on these. Okay. So there's like a little place where you can request a pay what you can slot, but that's where I'd say start, Lindsay, because that's going to give you, that's me turning my brain inside out and thinking, how do I make myself totally dispensable and share with you everything I know about this. And then you take it and do magic with it. Do whatever you want to do. Vita says, thank you. Hi, Vita. You're so welcome. Thanks for coming. What are the best timing for an essay workshop? And Lindsay, I'd love to hear from other folks. I find that right after APs, right before they get into the summer is the best time. I think that's when I came to the school, to your school, Lindsay. And I can't believe that time doesn't fill up more. Like I don't get more requests for that time, because that just to me seems like the sweet spot. Get them right before summer. Or the reason I lead, at the beginning of the summer, sometimes if you're doing like an online workshop, I find that, students are sometimes involved in, projects and doing all kinds of stuff. But if I can get I find that actually the mid to late June time is actually really good. If you're doing an online one. Waiting till fall, I find is too late. Jarek's asking, do these same activities and tools apply to transfer students, particularly ones coming from community colleges? I've noticed the transfer prompt to be is rigid. So would you go about injecting personality and values into those kinds of essays? Jarek, there's a blog post for that. So if you Google transfer essay, college essay guy, there's a step-by-step, here are the 6 parts to writing a transfer essay, and it's really super specific. It relates to some of the things that I've talked about, but the format and what they're looking for in those is really particular. So check that out. What are the minimum materials needed for a workshop for students? Do you recommend providing them or having them bring them? I have an 11-page handout that, is a PDF that I print out, or I have, the counselor print out front and back, and you give that to students with a pen and they're good. That's what I find the minimum. It's got examples in there. It's got the essence objects. It's got the values list and the feelings and needs. And the FAQ of, the sort of the college essays. No, I think it's called Essay Essentials. And that handout's in the essay workshop in a box, and it's in the course. Thanks, Vita. Liz says, do you find the values exercise works if they just narrow it down to top 5? No, I go 3 and then 1. or more meaningful or concrete if you connect it to their unique challenges. I mean, Liz, I'm doing that both. I'm doing both, right? So I'm just getting them to think about what their top values are, just as a way. It's a kind of a fun exercise to think about what's important to them. But then I'm using that values exercise in tons and tons of different ways. Cool. My mom was texting me, so I had to check and make sure my daughter was okay. She is. What's the optimal number of students for an essay workshop? I say the more the merrier, Terry, because these exercises, the way that I talk about this, and are going to work with 5 students. I've done it with a group of students at the the Pachanga Indian Casino, and I've worked with I think the biggest group was probably like 500 at Marshall High School. I think we had 400 students. Molly, you'll send me your book. Cool. Oh, that's a reason. Is that a reason? I think that's a reason. Lauren says, because I answered the question of what I'm longing for with nothing, but I'm now changing it to Ethan's college essay book. Lauren, that first one is a really good reason. I like that question or that answer. Michelle, because I had a bad day today and your webinar has re-energized me to have a better day tomorrow. Because I didn't bribe my way into undergrad. That's funny, Alicia. I work in a school with over 50% free and reduced lunch students and lots of mental health needs. We're always short on spending and can use as many free resources we can get, especially because I've been given the green light to teach juniors and seniors in their advisories once a week. Lindsay, you win. That's the one that I read that jumped out at me. Lindsay, just email info@collegeessayguy.com or help@collegeessayguy.com and we'll send you a free book. Let's see. Yes, Encore agrees. Lindsay wins. She deserves it for fighting the fight every day. I'm glad you agree with me. And Jennifer agrees too. Cool. Let's see. Because I skipped dinner for this webinar. Lindsay, everybody. Lindsay's won the vote by the popular vote. Okay. Laura. Cool. Highly selective admissions office. I'm just curious about what this is. Okay, if you really, really want a free book, email me with your reason and we'll consider it. But also you can get it on Amazon for I think it's like $8 or $10. Okay, that's it. I've gone overtime and I've pulled my tea bag out of my tea. I'm grateful. And I hope to connect with some of you on the course. Remember, there are pay what you can spots available. So I don't want money to be an issue. I don't want dollars to come between us. I have to charge for it because that's how people ask, how do you make money? I do courses. So that's why I'm charging for it. And you can tell I still feel shame around that, which is silly, but it is what it is. You actually kind of know why it is because I talked to you a little bit about it from my childhood. Anyway, end of the webinar. Thank you so much. Hope to connect with some of you soon and be well.